Hello, and how are you? I welcome you to our very first session. We shall have two sessions. Let me divide this time into two. I always divide it into two. So we shall have first 30 minutes, and then we start another session. All right. I hear your questions or your comments, and then we do another session. So it's okay. Let's do 40-40. All right. How are you, everyone? I'm called Muhindo Mbarak. I'm a software developer, and welcome you to our very first session in creating mobile application development. So there are so many things that have been evolving in mobile application industry, development industry. So we were using plain Java as well as Kotlin with the XML to create mobile apps. However, we are leaving that side, we are coming to the side of frameworks. So there are two main frameworks for mobile application development that are currently competing with each other. That is Flutter and React Native. But Flutter is outcompeting React Native in whatever statistics that you may try to follow out there, because it is suitable. I mean, it has features and has enough support and enough community and enough feature that can that cannot outcompete React Native. So that's why we're going to focus on Flutter. I will not convince you so much to why you should do Flutter. I'm going to focus much more on practicals. However, Flutter is the best choice compared to React Native, because with Flutter there is too much community compared to React Native, and there's a lot that is always evolving. So let's before we even go straight to the business, let me just clear your mind. For example, we have here what we call Stack Overflow insights. So Stack Overflow insights, they provide insights that can help you to compare different technologies to know which technology beats the other. Stack Overflow trends. So if you want to compare technologies, I believe most of you are familiar with Stack Overflow. It's a platform for developers. So if you want to compare technologies, you can just simply come here and put a technology, you'll be able to compare it. So for example, here we are comparing C and C++. You can see C is beating C++ in terms of usage and whatever. So if I come here and I put Flutter, I want to explain things on data. That's why I'm going this side. So if we put there Flutter, and then we also go ahead and put React Native, you'll see that React Native came before Flutter. So here I'm showing you that there are two. We have Flutter and React Native, where React Native is this orange and then Flutter is blue. So React Native came, you can see on the statistics, React Native came before Flutter, but Flutter, it has a way how it came after React Native, and then it broke through during COVID and has been up beyond Flutter. Flutter has been up beyond React Native. So if you want to venture any technology, so you have to first have a reason why you decide to choose that technology instead of others. So you can use these Stack Overflow trends to be able to compare technologies. So this can give you enough reason. This can give you enough reason for you to venture in React Native, in Flutter instead of React Native, unless you have your personal reasons, or maybe they need you to use React Native instead of Flutter. So Flutter is actually amazing compared to React Native. So that's why we're going to focus on Flutter, because the latest technology that everyone almost is using for developing mobile application. You create only one mobile application. You create only one code, and you can use that code to learn. You can use that code to compile it for Android app, and you can use the same code to compile it for for iOS application. So with that much said, let's go straight into business. So we're going to learn Flutter, because as you can see, it beats React Native by far. Now Flutter, I'm not going to begin exactly from 000. I'll receive questions after 40 minutes. I'll receive questions at once. So if you're putting your Armour app, write your question down. After 40 minutes, I'll receive all your questions. Now, if you are at 000, you've never done any programming language, I'll take care of you as well. So React Native, we use that programming language Flutter, we use that programming language to create to create Flutter systems. So what I'm going to do, we are going to begin straight from Flutter. However, I'm going to show you, I'll be giving you sources where you can learn where you can learn deep things if you want to go deep with Flutter. Alright, so to set up Flutter, so let's begin with setting up Flutter. First of all, before you even set up Flutter, of course, we are going to dive into practicals because you may think that I'm talking too much, but I'm trying to give you a real mindset of how things be like. So before we go into Flutter, first of all, you need a good platform that you can use to create Flutter systems. The first thing you need a good computer. When I say good computer, you need a computer that has at least 8 GB RAM and an SSD. It should be at least i5 and SSD storage device. So if in your computer you don't have SSD, like SSD, if instead of having hard disk, if you're having hard disk instead of SSD, I advise you, if you want to invest in these things of learning mobile application development, I advise you at least to find anywhere to get some money. SSDs are not very expensive in Uganda. Here at 250,000 you can get an SSD. But once you learn these things, trust me, you'll earn, and the money that will not go even beyond buying an SSD. So I advise you at least to buy an SSD. It's around 250, and install it in your computer, SSD instead of what? Instead of hard disk. So if you have somewhere to note, put on your notes, you have to put at least SSD. So am I saying that you should have an SSD in your computer? Because a computer that uses hard disk is always slow. It's usually slow, and when things are slow, you can get demoralized along the way. So that's my first advice. Go ahead and invest in at least this money to buy a good computer. To boost your computer, to make it powerful. At least put there an SSD. If you have an SSD, well and good. If you have 8 GB RAM, that is very good. 8 GB plus, that is very good. So once you finish setting up your computer, having a computer that is having those features, even though they might not be there, if you're having an hard disk, it's okay, but SSD is recommended. So the next thing that you have to do is to set up your computer, your environment, to have a setup of Flutter environment in your computer. So I'm going to show you how we can set up our computers to be able to create Flutter applications. So the first thing that we'll do, those people who already experienced, of course, you may see these things as if they're relevant. It's okay. However, once we finish picking these people up, you'll see that we shall start sharing different techniques that can even be helpful to you. So the first thing that we'll do, you'll have simply come here and search Flutter SDK. So go to Google and search Flutter SDK. So the first link that you'll get on Google, you'll get a link that will enable you to download Flutter. So go ahead and download relevant Flutter in your computer, and then it will come as zip. So select your right operating system. So for example, I'm using Mac operating system. I can go ahead and select my respective system. My respective version. If you're using Windows, click on tab of Windows. Go ahead and select Windows. So go ahead and download the latest version. If you're using 64-bit, if you're using 32-bit, go ahead and as well download your respective version. So after downloading the version of Flutter that you want, so the Flutter will come as a zip file. So go ahead and unzip file and unzip that folder that you'll have downloaded and put that piece of code somewhere. I always advise you put that piece of code in your C drive. So go ahead and put that code in your C drive, okay? In your C partition, okay? On your computer, on your hard disk, or on your storage, okay? So put it there, that code that you'll have unzipped from Flutter. So that is the first step. After doing so, the next thing you'll need an IDE. So an IDE is a software that will enable you to create and compile mobile applications. So I always recommend Android Studio. However, some people use Visual Studio Code. However, for creating mobile applications, I recommend Android Studio because these are the people who create Flutter themselves, and it comes with much more features compared to Xcode. So sorry, to Visual Studio Code. So go ahead and download Android Studio. So search Android Studio on what? On Google, Android Studio, and then you'll find the first link. Go ahead and say install or download Android Studio. So when you click on download Android Studio, they'll take you to the section where you'll find a button that will enable you to download Android Studio. So go ahead and download Android Studio. Let me show you. It is here. So go ahead and download Android Studio. Here, it is here, the button. You download it and install it in your computer. So while you're downloading Android Studio, you are downloading Android Studio so that you should be able to write code of Flutter and also be able to compile it to come up with a real mobile application, or what we always call APK, as well as debugging, okay, when you're testing the mobile applications. So you go ahead and download that Android Studio. I believe these steps are clear. Download it. After downloading it, go ahead and install it on your computer. So when you install it for the first time, it will ask you to be connected to internet so it can download the remaining drivers. Go ahead and do so. So after downloading Android Studio, the next thing you'll have to open Android Studio. So when I open my Android Studio, it will look like this. It will look much more like this one, okay? So after doing so, the next thing, we are going to add a Flutter plugin in Android Studio. So that Flutter plugin is the one, you know, Android Studio is a multi-purpose software. You can use it to develop many things that are not even Flutter. So we have to make this Android Studio to tell it that for us, you're going to be developing Flutter applications. So to set the Android Studio to be able to be compatible for Flutter applications, you'll have to go to this section of plugins, or you can even find these plugins here under file, under setting. Under Android Studio menu, and then settings. Then you go to this section of plugins. You'll be able to find your plugins there. So in this Android Studio, we are going to add our Flutter plugin. So the plugin of Flutter is the one that's going to make Android Studio compatible for Flutter applications. So let's go ahead and do so. So click on plugins and then come here to marketplace. Go ahead and search for Flutter. So when you search for Flutter, you'll receive, you'll get a list of Flutter app. Go ahead, extension. Go ahead and install it. So once you install it, you'll go ahead and restart your application. So when you restart your application, Android Studio, for the first time, Flutter will ask you to identify where you have Flutter plugin will ask you to identify where you put your Flutter SDK code. So go ahead and specify the folder. You could just navigate and specify the folder where you put your Flutter SDK code. So those are the two steps that we do to create, to set up Android Studio with Flutter. So if you find some challenges, or there are so many videos on YouTube, you can just simply search, install or set up Flutter environment. There are so many videos. Even me, I've made a lot of videos that are teaching. I've made 2 videos, sorry, not a lot, 2 videos that show you a step-by-step guidance of how you can install Flutter into your computer. So after making sure that you've installed Flutter into your computer, you've ran what we call Flutter Doctor, so you'll have something like that. So just know one thing, don't give up, because you're not the first person to install this Flutter. So some people may say, for me, I failed to do what? I failed to install Flutter in my computer. No, you're not the first person. Okay, so always know that it is possible. So even if you find some challenges, you can ask teachers, you can ask people already experienced, to make sure that you at least you achieve that goal of setting up your platform, because it is not magic. Trust me, it's not magic. Though you may find challenges, but trust me, it is really, really achievable to do what? To set up a Flutter environment. So I will assume that you have set up your Flutter environment, which is, I believe, you can do if you're really motivated to learn these things. The next thing is now to create our first Flutter application. So to create a Flutter application, you just simply come to what you call projects and then click on new. So after you've set up after you set up your Android Studio, the next thing, and Flutter Flutter plugin into Android Studio, the next thing you'll be able to access this button of new Flutter project. So click on Flutter project. So now here they'll ask you to tell the path of Flutter that you want to use. So go ahead and browse here. So you can click here and browse and select the folder of where you set up your Flutter SDK code, the first thing that you downloaded first. So after doing so, the next thing that you're going to do is to click next. So when you click next, it will now a place where you're going to set your Flutter project. So I'm going to call this Learn Flutter 2024. That's going to be the name of my project. So I'm going to go ahead and say Learn. So I'll come here to the project name and go ahead and say Learn Flutter 2024. That's the name of my project. So always try to avoid spaces in the names of your folders, wherever you can do them, but always try to avoid them, okay? So I put, that is it, where my project is. The name of my project. So how should my project be saved? I want my project to be saved on my desktop on GitHub folder, and then in Learn Flutter 2024. So that is the folder where I want my project to be set. So I'll go ahead and put the description of this project. This project is meant for learning and practicing Flutter. So this is a description for my project. Alright. Then after doing so, the next thing, it will remain as application. So this package name, you can leave it the way it is. Whoever in future shall show how it can change it. Go ahead and click next. Okay, go ahead and click create. After move, so I'll go ahead and say create. Lowercase, okay, with underscore. So I'll go ahead and click on create. So when you click on create, the system will start loading and you'll have to wait for it to finish. So if you're doing it for the first time, it can take a minute to load, but you have to wait for it to finish. So let's wait for it to finish. So as it is finishing, I'm going to show you another thing that you have to do. So another thing that you have to do is to set up your GitHub. So if you don't know what is GitHub, GitHub is a software that enables us to manage Git. Git, it is a software also that enables us to manage our repositories or our code, to be able to collaborate together, etc. So I'm going to show you how we use GitHub, and then your assignment or your home task, I will task you to do what? To create your project and add them on GitHub. So try to be attentive. I'm going to show you what you're going to do after this lecture. So after doing so, my project has finished syncing. The next thing, I'm going to go ahead and create an emulator. So to create an emulator, you just simply come here and click here and say, click on new to create a virtual emulator. So a virtual emulator is a phone-like, it's a phone in your phone. That is a simple way I can define it. It is a phone that's going to be in your computer. So you can use this emulator to do what? You can use this emulator to test your applications. However, to use an emulator now, at least I want you to have at least an 80 GB, at least 16 GB RAM to use emulator. If you don't have emulator, you can still set up your phone to be able to debug your application. So you just connect your USB and then you go to settings of your phone and enable debugging. And then after enabling debugging, you go ahead and enable USB debugging. Okay, so after enabling USB debugging, you will be able to compile your application and it runs on your phone. Also, it gives you a link that shows you a detail of how you can set up your phone to be a debugging tool. So I'm repeating, if your GB is less than 80 GB RAM, is less than equal to 80 GB RAM, don't try emulators, because they are heavy things that will slow your computer. But my computer is powerful, so I can have as many emulators as possible. So if you're not going to use emulator, you'll use your phone to test your your applications. So for me, I already have my emulators here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start one of them. So I'll just simply come here. Let me select this one. What is the one that I always use? I think I'll select this one, and I run it. So I'll wait for it to do what? To open. So once it opens, your emulators will be registered here. All your emulators will be registered here. So if I click on refresh and maybe you have connected a phone, it will go ahead and show up there. Anyway, let me connect my phone and we see how it will look like. So that is an emulator. I can see there's an emulator there. Let me connect my phone. So if I connect my phone, remove lock. So you see, if I now come here, and I click on refresh, I'm going to be able to see my emulator. Anyway, so people who are already good in this, of course, you are familiar with these things. However, we are trying to cater for those who are actually fresh in mobile application development. So let's all be patient. Let's all be attentive. So I can extend this guy here. All right. All right. So you see here, my Samsung phone is here. So Android Studio these days, you can be able even to show your phone within within emulators. So I can be able to show my phone there. So you see, this is my real physical phone. So that is now possible with Android Studio. So yeah, that's it. You can switch the emulators from here. Now, I've finished setting up my Flutter project. So the next thing, I'm going to run it. So to run it, I'll just simply select the emulator. I want to run it here, and then go ahead and click on run. But as I repeat again, don't use emulators if your computer is slow. Use your phones for debugging. Connect your phone, and then it's the one that will be selecting for debugging. Unless your RAM is at least 16, at least 8 GB, but the recommended is 16 GB. All right, so let's wait for it to compile. So it will take some time if it is compiling for the very first time. So let me go direct to my what? I'm done. Nyie muniachie fujo.
Recording in progress.
Hello members, I'll share my screen again. Sorry about that. Okay, so hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
All right, yeah, that's fine. So you should mute your microphones. Now, so I have selected my emulator, which is P1, and I've run my application by clicking here, and then I'll be able to see my application here. So I can be able to click there, and then I'll be able to see that my Flutter application is there and it is running. So that is so nice, and that can help us to get started with the Flutter application development. Alright, so that is so good. Okay, so now before we go to explaining this code, before we go to explaining this code, I would like to teach you basics of GitHub for those who are new to GitHub, so that by the time we proceed, at least we should have our application on what? On GitHub. So you can say application is there, it is running. I can be able to increase this number. Alright, so let me show you GitHub. That's a very important thing, because going forward, we shall be reviewing your progresses on GitHub. You'll never regret for any reason for it. You never regret for why you learned GitHub, because moving forward, collaborating with teams these days is done on what? On Git and GitHub. So let me show you how you can set up your GitHub. So first things first, you'll first go ahead and search for what we call Git. So go to your browser and search Git. So search Git. Go ahead and download Git by clicking download Git for Windows if you're using Windows. So if you're using Mac, you just simply go ahead and download Git from here by following the step that I'll show you. You just run this terminal, and then you'll have Git in your in your computer. So after downloading Git, the next thing you'll have to create an account on. You have to download GitHub itself. So go ahead and search for GitHub. So Git is the software that manages our code, whereby GitHub is the software that makes it simple for us to use what? To use GitHub. To use Git. It gives us an interface that interacts with Git with simplicity. So go ahead and search for GitHub and download it. Click on GitHub, download. Just search GitHub for desktop, and then when you click GitHub for desktop, click on download. So click on download GitHub for desktop, download your respective GitHub here. So if you're using Windows, automatically this one will be Windows. Whoever can change from the releases. So go ahead and download GitHub from here. So after downloading, you'll have an installable file. Go ahead and install in your computer. So after installing the GitHub, the next thing is to now add your project in GitHub. To log in into GitHub. So open your GitHub. So when you open your GitHub software, it will look much more like this. All right? It will look like that. So you'll have to log in, right? You have to log in so it can be able to identify you with the online one. So go ahead and create and log in. So to log in, you'll need an account on GitHub. So we just simply come here and say create GitHub account on your browser. Alright, so you go ahead and say join GitHub, and then in this registration form, creating an account on GitHub. Anyway, I'm already logged in, so let me be like I'm not logged in. So let me open this in incognito mode. So if I'm not signed in, you'll see here a button that asks me to sign up. So I can go ahead and sign up, okay, by signing up here. So if you don't have an account, you can go ahead and fill this form to sign up. If you already have an account, you just simply click here, sign in. So when you click on sign in, you'll be able to enter your username and password. So that is, if you've forgotten your password, you can still reset it if you have the email. So that is how we set up our that's how we create a GitHub account. So after you've logged in, after you create an account and log in on the browser, the next thing will be now to connect your GitHub software with your GitHub account. So to do so, you just simply come to GitHub and then go to GitHub icon and then say settings and then say Git. So when you say Git, then you'll be able to find here an account that will enable you to log in. Here, you'll find a button like this. So click on login into GitHub and then go ahead and select your respective account. Okay. So after you've selected a respective account, you'll be now able to have GitHub into your computer set up with the other version that is online. So that is how you set up your GitHub repository. So yep, so that is how you set up your your GitHub. However, it is not hard if you follow these steps very carefully. If you read, if you're interested, trust me, you'll be able to figure how you can set up those things that I've explained. Now, let's start now. So now, how do you add the project into GitHub? So to add your project into GitHub, you just simply go ahead and get your GitHub project. So my project is called Learn Flutter 2024. Where is it? I remember I put it here in GitHub. So I got my respective folder, and then I go to where there is Learn Flutter 2024. This one here. So what I'm going to do, just going to simply drag and drop it here in GitHub software. So when I drag and drop it in GitHub software, it will tell me that they don't know that repository that you're trying to add. So they'll give us a button that asks us if you want to add a new repository. So I'll go ahead and say yes, create a new repository. So I'll have to specify what should be the repository name, what should be the description, what should be the description, something like that, all right, of my project, okay, when it is pushed on GitHub. And then if I want to initialize a repository, we can just say, a README, you can just say initialize README. And then git ignore here, you go ahead and select for that, all right. So go ahead and select that should be ignoring. Should use that to ignore unnecessary files. Let's go ahead and create a repository. So this is now a process of creating this project to become a repository. So after you've created the repository, so you have not pushed it on internet. So you have to click on this button to push it on internet. So when you click on publish, now that repository will be published to what? To GitHub. Okay. So if you want to see where a repository is, just simply right click here and say view on GitHub. View on GitHub. So when you click on view on GitHub, the system will launch my repository into my computer. So that is how you create repositories. So everything that I'll be commenting or adding, I'll be first commenting them and then I push here. I'll be first committing them, then I push them to the what? To the system. And it means that we can be able now to collaborate multiple people. If you're working there and I'm also working here on the same document, you can use GitHub to always push your changes, and I receive them and review it and also put my own changes. So this is now a link that is public. I can give it to you to be able to see what I've just done, which is that. All right, so that's the task that I'll need you to do. I'll give you the detail of the task that asks you, okay, how you can create a project or repository on GitHub and also push it. Okay, so now in the next session, we are going now to explain all these things that you're seeing. That you're seeing in this code. Okay, we're going to explain everything that you're seeing in this code in the next session. So this session we have just focused on introduction to Flutter, setting up environment, as well as introduction to GitHub, creating account, and also adding their things. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to resume from the next next session, starting from there. However, if I have questions, I now welcome them. Those people who are asking, kindly, you can open your microphone and then we talk about this. You can ask your questions.